and welcome to the CAFMA Connect. I'm your host, Fire Chief Scott Freitag, and with me today, a special guest, Captain Ben Roche, who is also the president of Local 3066. Ben, welcome.
Morning, Chief.
Yeah, thank you for coming in, and thank you for working with us yesterday on a special project as well. We won't talk about that one. That one will be a surprise. So thanks for being here.
Well, it's a pleasure. I'm glad you invited me. It's a treat to come talk with you and be in front of the audience of all our employees and the public.
Well, and now that you've seen the place, you know that in the narrow view screen, you can see the table, us, the screen, and Damien's flag, Captain List's flag, if somebody wants to build one. Other than that, it's pretty much just my old office.
It looks a lot less involved than I thought it would be behind the scenes here. It's a couple old tables and a lot of wires.
It's the magic of Jonah.
Well,
that's what it is.
It's a fantastic appearance on screen.
Yeah. So, Ben, the reason I wanted you in here today, a couple of things. One, because I think it shows a good labor management relationship between the local, at the local level, and Bob Curry is the VP, so he's the one I work with more closely on CAFMA specific things. But you cover not just us, but Prescott, Groom Creek, Mare, Williamson Valley. Who else?
Those are the chapters of our local, and I completely agree. It's been a long process of building these relationships, but the labor management process and having a good relationship is absolutely necessary to have a successful organization.
Right. Well, and the topic for today, again, is ambulance response in the area and the challenges that we have. And many people out there have probably seen the social media post. We have some very creative people, including Jonah, helping us put all of that information together and out there for the public. But this is a union and administration labor management process to try to deal with the issues that we're facing.
Correct. Just as about as any aspect that we deal with, we try to create that partnership and find solutions for common problems between labor and management.
Right.
This absolutely being one.
It is. And I think from that standpoint, Ben, I'd like to start by saying and letting the public know that our personnel, the folks that you represent, have a great relationship on the street with the AMR paramedics and EMTs that are doing the best they can with the limited resources they're provided by their corporation, AMR.
Yeah, there is nothing happening on the street level, the ground level, between the employees of AMR and CAFMA employees or Prescott employers. They all are cohesive and after the same mission of serving our community.
And the fact of the matter is, those folks on the AMR rigs, you see them, they're exhausted. They're run hard. They have very few resources. They're limited on staff, so they're working hours upon hours upon hours. And my request to the public would be, if you see them at a gas station, please don't approach them and yell at them and say, you should be out on the street somewhere, because it's not them. It's the corporate. It's that conglomerate hedge fund that AMR is that is the problem. So we would ask that you focus your frustration directly to the Bureau of EMS down at the Department of Health Services, the governor's office, local elected officials, Senator Karen Fann, Representative Kwan, Representative Judy Burgess. Reach out and talk to those folks and let them know your frustrations. Let them know that they need to take action, because the failure here, and we'll talk more about AMR, but the failure here is really at the state level. It's the Bureau of EMS.
Absolutely. It's not the AMR employees, and it's not the people that we see here out in our public. It's back at the corporation level. It's
AMR management and AMR corporate. There's where the issues lie. And we'll get into that too. But please, if you're out there and you see an AMR paramedic or EMT, thank them for what they're doing, because they're not the ones who are limiting us to 3 or 4 or several ambulances in the system. It's their management that's doing that. And here lately, yesterday, I know we had 6 yesterday afternoon. Yesterday morning was a bit of a cluster. And when I say yesterday, this is going to air on Friday. We're recording on Wednesday. So Tuesday was a bit of a cluster in the morning, but by afternoon they had 6 units. Now this is something that AMR has a history of doing, and that's if there's a problem somewhere and people really start complaining and put pressure on them, they don't necessarily add units to the system. They pull units from another system, short that system, move them to where the problem is to try to appease people, and then as soon as they quiet down, they move them back out. That is something that is well known and documented throughout the state of Arizona. It's not me making stuff up. I'm sure you've heard it from the union side.
Yeah, it seems like they're kind of doing a sleight of hand and shuffling the ambulances around the state as see fit to appease.
Well, and they're doing that in Mojave County, where I was talking to the Kingman fire chief the other day, and he said at 6:30 in the morning, he had a unit responding from Lake Havasu City, an hour away, at 6:30 in the morning. And he said there were no other calls out in his area. So the area of Golden Valley, the city of Kingman, and everywhere that is northern Arizona fire district, no ambulances.
That's just an unacceptable predicament that our public gets put into.
Right, and the reason I want to bring that up is because it's a bigger problem than what we're seeing. But as folks have probably noticed, we have a social media campaign going, and we're working on some media, and of course we've got the podcast. And why are we at that point? Seems a little extreme. Well, we were told by high-ranking officials that there's no appetite at the state to deal with this. So if we want something done, it's incumbent upon us to do something big. And my response was big, like, I don't know, a press conference on the steps of DHS with a couple of rescues flanking in the background. And they said, yeah, that would do it. So here we are.
Well, public awareness will go a long ways with the elected officials.
And the reality is we've worked on this for 6 years, and the public needs to know that their health and well-being is not priority number one for the state. It's not priority number one for the current transport company that's up here. In my opinion, it is at the street level with the paramedics and EMTs responding, but corporately, it does not seem that patient care is priority one when they're not providing services. Again, my opinion only, and based on what I've seen in my experience with them. So, but part of the media campaign, it's interesting. So the Daily Courier did an article on Friday, and I read some of the comments from one of their management staff here and who manages northern Arizona. And let's take a look at something that he said. We're going to start with the first part of this. It says, Valentine said there was no actual complaint. Now, this is in regard to the notice of investigation that we received in late September with 15 complaints about us transporting when it wasn't medically necessary. And the first transport listed was an 8-month-old infant in cardiac arrest. So remember, Mr. Valentine said in the Courier that he did not file any actual complaints. So, and the Bureau, for their part, has come back and said, you're not under investigation. The letter we sent is just hard to understand. So here's the letter they sent, dated September 22nd, 2021. We can see why it would be hard to understand that we're not under investigation, because the letter says at the top, notice of investigation. So let's go down here, and it says that the purpose of this letter is to inform you that the Arizona Department of Health Services, Bureau of Emergency Medical Services and Trauma System, has received written complaints. Ben, does that say written complaints?
It does.
Interesting. It doesn't say written questions.
No, it does not. It seems pretty clear that what this intent of this was.
Yeah, written complaints against Central Arizona. I'm reading it right. I mean, grasping the English language. Therefore, we have initiated an investigation. Again, the Bureau says we're not under investigation. That says they initiated an investigation. They did send a follow-up letter to that says, we just need more information. You're not under investigation, which our attorney says means you're under investigation. So this says we've received written complaints. Now, Ben, if I had a question for you, I'd call you.
I would hope so.
I wouldn't go to Heather, your lovely wife, say, Heather, I have questions about Ben. That would be me complaining to Heather.
Might not get the right answer.
No. Or
you could get a better answer.
We'd probably have a lot in common. A lot of conversation. So let's go back to the Courier article again. And in regard to the 8-month-old, And that response, because we transported from the scene in a rescue to the landing zone. Mr. Valentine goes on to say Lifeline Ambulance was 3 minutes from the scene when it was told to divert to the fire station that CAFMA was transporting. So let's focus on this. He said they were 3 minutes out. Ben, Jonah, let's go to the replay and see what the replay says.
3101. 3101, go ahead. How far are you guys out? QETA 3101. Engine 61, 3101, we're about 12 minutes out, sir. 61 copies. Alarm battalion 6.
Go ahead, sir.
We're going to go ahead and utilize Rescue 61, be en route to Station 61 with the patient.
Ben, I'm sorry. What was the ETA given to Engine 61?
I heard 12 minutes.
I thought I heard 12 minutes. Jonah, what did you hear?
12 minutes.
12 minutes. So it's unanimous in this room. We heard 12 minutes. And I don't think, it didn't seem like, unless there's a time and space continuum we missed, that there was 9 minutes between the time that 3101 gave 12 minutes and Battalion 6 said they were transporting. That was what, 15 seconds maybe?
Correct.
So the information our crew had before they transported the 8-month-old was 12-minute response time, 8-month-old cardiac arrest. Ben, you're a paramedic.
I'm actually an EMT.
Sorry.
But, just basic knowledge, most human beings cannot hold their breath 9 minutes to wait for a medical professional to get there.
Well, I mean, time is tissue, is what doctors say. And you have an infant, an 8-month-old. We're starting to get some respirations that are labored potentially. Vitally important that we get the 8-month-old from the scene to the landing zone so that the pediatric patient can be flown to a pediatric facility, which is in the valley because we don't have one. And the unit, and in the article, Mr. Valentine acknowledges that 3101 was diverted to the landing zone. And that's true. And some may say, well, why did you divert 3101 to the landing zone instead of just putting them back in service? And the answer to that is the helicopter's on the ground, but at any point the helicopter could have a problem or something goes wrong or there's some sort of issue that the patient can no longer be transported via the helicopter. And that means that the Lifeline ambulance would be on scene there and we can continue care with Lifeline into the hospital. I don't see anything nefarious, do you?
No, it seems like a reasonable backup plan. We're always looking at the what ifs, and we definitely were covering the what ifs, getting the patient the critical care they needed as rapidly as possible.
So some of the other complaints, there were 15 complaints listed on that particular notice of investigation. The 8-month-old was first. One of the complaints was for a call that Lifeline actually transported. We didn't. One was for a patient who refused treatment transport, so there's no transport there. So of the 15, 13 calls from our medical director were deemed medically necessary transports. And they included, so remember it said, transports that were not medically necessary to include 8-month-old in cardiac arrest, a patient actively having a stroke, a shooting victim, a trauma victim from a motor vehicle crash. The patient that went to the local hospital was taken by the Lifeline ambulance, but they didn't have enough resources to send. So the trauma patient most critically injured who needed to get to a trauma center in Phoenix was transported by our rescue to the landing zone for the helicopter. We had a patient actively having a stroke, a patient actively having an allergic reaction with difficulty breathing and throat swelling, another active stroke. So, I mean, that's a sampling of what was the question was, were they medically necessary? Or the accusation was that they weren't medically necessary. Ben, you're on the street.
I would think common knowledge would dictate that any one of those are necessary.
I'm going to agree with you that they are. And that's why the message to our crews is make the decision in the field based on the patient, get them to the hospital. I'll deal with the fallout from AMR in the state, whatever that may be. My understanding from the state is that they're going to find these unsubstantiated, which obviously they are. Our medical director, Dr. Lampe, already opined on this and said, hey, these were all medically necessary. So, this just goes back to the problem lies at the state level. And I did contact the state, and I asked their representative who signed the letter, I said, hey, if I need your help understanding something, because if an 8-month-old in cardiac arrest does not rise to the level of a medically necessitated transport, then can you tell me what does?
What was their answer?
They couldn't give me one. They really didn't have one. They did ask, did you receive medical control advice to transport the patient? And my response was, I don't need medical control to tell our crews to transport an 8-month-old in cardiac arrest when the transport ambulance is still 12 minutes away.
Well, and I think that's a great message to the public to know that when they call 911, the fire department is going to show up. We will answer the call, and we will take appropriate steps to make sure that they are treated and cared for in all the necessary ways.
Absolutely. And that's what our crews have been doing. And it's been a strain on you all in the field. What are you seeing from that standpoint, Ben, with having to, hey, engine 59's on a call, or engine 63, your engine's on a call, and now you need the rescue. So now we have to pull 61 and rescue 61 because it's the only way we can transport.
Well, it's putting an additional workload and strain on the organization. Our mission is to protect life and property, and the delay in transport and the inability for AMR to deliver the level of service, it's impeding our mission. And all of our firefighters out there, they have a calling to fulfill that mission and serve our community. So it just is a very bad situation overall, and we need help at the state level to get this solved. We
absolutely do need that help at the state level, and that's why we have the social media campaign. And those are quick hits, bits of information to drive people to go to our web page. That, Jonah, can you link the web page this week for us? Very cool, thanks. I've got a thumbs up from Jonah. That provides more documentation, because some have said, you're misleading the public. You are providing half-truths. Well, if you go to the webpage, you'll see that the information we're putting out there is verifiable and backed up by documentation, data, statistics, just like the level 0. So as of yesterday morning or Tuesday morning, we had been at level 0 400 times between July 2nd and October 12th. Seems excessive.
It puts our community at a great risk.
Now, Ben, let me ask you this, because the response from AMR was, well, level 0 is only for a few minutes.
Well,
have you seen it?
We know in
longer?
an emergency, every minute count, every second count.
Absolutely.
So, it's just an unacceptable thing. They should be able to adapt to the level of service the community requires.
Well, and we've seen expansive growth in this community over the years, and in the 6 years we've been working with DHS, or trying to work with DHS to affect change, and even the legislature to affect change, the number of units AMR has on the street has been reduced for staffing issues, whatever it is. Now, we'll give them the last 18 months, everybody struggled some with COVID. But that's not the answer, because these issues existed well before COVID.
Absolutely. And it just has a rippling effect to all of the adjoining agencies, all of the firefighters. And as a representative for the firefighters, I represent their well-being and interests. And the number one interest we have for firefighters is their safety. And so the strain that this puts on there, it imposes undue risk and safety issues that we're trying to address. And so as we continue with this campaign, it's going to be a partnership between labor and management to make sure that all of the public and our elected officials are aware of this issue.
Well, and Ben, have you talked to the Prescott firefighters that had to transport the critical patients by private vehicle?
I'm aware of that situation, and it was very compromising for our firefighters. They transported a victim in a personal vehicle while administrating emergency care. And, it comes into a lot of question of what safety protocols were being followed there in a vehicle that we have no maintenance records on. It's not equipped for emergency traffic, not equipped to be working on any kind of patient in the back. So,
but it's all they had.
And that's really where firefighters lie. We have a calling to serve our community, and our motto is to risk a lot to save a lot. So when we see potential life threats and the chance to save a life, we're willing to take those further risks to do that. But organizationally, I think we need to be looking at ways to help prevent that and mitigate around those to keep our firefighters and our public as safe as possible.
Absolutely. And in the past, we've transported a patient having an active stroke in the backseat of their personal vehicle while the medic treated in the back seat. A firefighter drove the car. Somebody drove the engine. Now, since then, we have 4 rescues that we have. But, we're walking a fine line running those rescues, and we're trying to staff them with overtime. And when we can't staff them with overtime, we put our folks on them because we just feel like there has to be a way to get the patient to the hospital. And there's only so long you can wait on the scene before it has a negative effect on the health and well-being of the patient. We received, to our complaints about the untoward outcomes, one, it took 2.5 years to get an answer from the Bureau of EMS on those complaints. Again, seems excessive. But the response was, well, those patients died on scene and resuscitative efforts were ceased while still on the scene. We were there on at least one call, if not 2, for 45 minutes. Yeah, the physician's going to say, cease.
Well, there's only so much you can do on an emergency scene. The goal is to get a patient to definitive care at a hospital.
Right. And even the ones that, they ceased resuscitative efforts at the hospital. We had been on scene prior to the ambulance. The ambulance took an additional 18 to 20 minutes to get there. And then we still had to transport all the way into the hospital. So in a cardiac arrest situation, seconds count. And when you're waiting that long, you decrease the chance of the patient being revived or having some sort of successful outcome from the efforts of the paramedics on the scene. Because our job, get there, do what we can to stabilize, mitigate, and get them to definitive care at the hospital. It's not to wait on scene for 20, 30, 40 minutes.
Well, absolutely. Even at the basic EMT schooling level, they teach of the golden hour. And there's time frames that we want to get patients to the hospital so they can have the most success for outcome.
Right. And to be honest with you, I came from a system in Missouri, obviously, the St. Charles area. I've never seen anything like this at all. What we are dealing with today is a crisis of healthcare in our area regarding transport to the hospital. Now, so what's the ask? We can sit here all day and we can complain about, well, let's stop for just a second before we go to what's the ask. Let's go to, on our webpage, you'll see that this is not just a problem with AMR here locally. If you go to the webpage link, you'll see Colorado, you'll see Georgia, you'll see California, you'll see Kentucky. And then over the weekend when we started our social media campaign, it appears that LA County may have started one of their own. What does this say? 2-vehicle collision, Sheriff FD en route, code 3. Update, Engine 93 on scene requesting ETA for, what does that say? AMR. AMR advises ETA of 45 to 50 minutes. S93 requesting air squad for 2 pediatric and 1 adult. Minor injuries, thank God. Engine 93 advises they aren't waiting on an ambulance. All patients will be transported in the sheriff's vehicle. Ben?
Last time I checked, sheriff vehicles are not equipped to transport patients.
You know what, though? We had to have a DPS trooper transport a patient, or we didn't have to have them. The DPS trooper transported an 8-year-old pediatric patient from Ash Fork to our station in Paulden.
I remember.
Yes. So the next one, let's go to San Bernardino County Fire. Let's talk about that one real quick. San Bernardino County Professional Firefighters. It's a union, local, Ben.
Yeah. Fairly large local there in California.
So what does the bottom of that say?
AMR being level 0.
Huh. So it's not just here with this national conglomerate company.
No, I mean, AMR is a global company, and, it's notorious, as I talk to other locals, of the level of service they provide in their areas as well. And so it seems like such a simplistic problem. We need more ambulances, but this is a governmental controlled thing, and you throw the government and it gets complex on how we solve this problem.
Yeah. So, we look at this and we say, man, and they're a publicly traded company under GMR as the parent.
Yes.
So you can go and look it up and see what their return on investment for their investors were. What their return on investment was for their investors over the last year, and it was pretty sizable.
They're a large corporation.
Yeah, big corporation. You'd think they'd have more resources. So, well, let's get to the bottom line. So over 6 years, or since 2017, so we've been working on this for 6 years. In that time, reduced the number of ambulances in the area, which is creating a crisis with transport response. Yeah. So we have rescues. People are being transported in private vehicles. People are being put in taxis. Other family members are driving them to the hospital, all because of ambulance shortages. YRMC, Yavapai Regional, under Dignity Health, they have had to resort to transporting patients between their two facilities via helicopter for 12-hour wait times. Since 2017, we filed 1,100 complaints about response time issues. 400 times since July 2nd that they've been at level 0.
And what is the outcome of our 1,100 complaints?
Unsubstantiated.
So
no problems.
They have taken no action on 1,100 complaints, found any validity on any of those, but yet are taking action on the complaints of AMR?
Yes, because we were filing those complaints, and they were just sending us a letter back. And of late, when we were filing the complaints mid this year, they started within 2 hours. We were getting a form letter back saying your complaints aren't valid, and that's fine. Whatever. It just seems like there's been a lot more vigor put into investigating CAFMA for putting patient care as priority number one and getting them to the hospital. In fact, 2 of the rescues we run, Ben, I don't know if you know this, we're on loan or are on loan from Mesa Fire Medical. One is from Northwest Fire Medical. One Sun City donated. But the Mesa ones, that's an interesting one because the state sent them a letter seeking information about how and why they loaned us fire department equipment. Now, what's important to understand here is the state keeps calling them ambulances, and we keep telling them we're not running ambulances, we're running rescues. The statute is very clear. The Mesa units are only certificated ambulances if they're running in Mesa's CON jurisdiction, run by Mesa paramedic and EMTs, or in a surrounding jurisdiction with whom they have a backup agreement. Once they leave Mesa's area and they're not being run by Mesa, they're no longer a certificated ambulance in the state. They are a piece of fire department equipment that can be used for a variety of low acuity calls, including a snake call, a smoke detector check, but could also be used for transport when necessary. So let's be clear in case the state watches this on what's going on here. And they are clear on it, but they seem bent on coming after us, but not actually addressing the problem that they have allowed to get to this point.
So it's just absolutely absurd. I mean, here is an organization going above and beyond to serve its community at a cost that they were not anticipating. And instead of being praised and awarded for the level of service and the ways to supplement the service, we're being investigated?
Yes. Well, no. Yes, no. Maybe.
Questioned.
It's questioned. There you go, Ben. We're being questioned. Not investigated, because they're just asking questions. Even though it says notice of investigation, which makes it confusing.
It very problematic. And why is that? Why would you not want to serve your community at the best of your abilities?
Yeah. Well, we have a protocol now from YRMC that our people in the field follow. So any critical patient where there's an extended response time per our medical control, we can transport. Any what they call non-critical patient, if Lifeline's at level 0 or AMR's at level 0 when we are dispatched, we have protocol to transport. Or if we receive a response ETA of 30 minutes or greater for non-critical, we can transport. Now let's be clear on non-critical, because we had a patient that appeared non-critical, 90-year-old gentleman. We talked to his grandson. Was taken by a private vehicle because no ambulance is available, and it turns out on further lab work he was actually having a massive heart attack.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that calls 911, they're obviously having an issue.
Right.
And we go with the assumption that it's an emergency situation. That's what 911 is intent.
So as a former paramedic, I started. I've transported patients before that started out non-critical. You're thinking, okay, this person's doing pretty good, and en route something changes like that, and now we're running code 3 and administering advanced life support. I'm not talking about necessarily just going into CPR and those types of things, but trying to keep them from getting to that point.
Absolutely.
So putting patients that seem non-critical in a personal vehicle and saying that's an okay way to transport, or waiting an hour and a half on scene, hour on scene for a transport unit is not appropriate.
No, the whole scenario puts the patient at risk, it puts our public at risk, and it puts our firefighters at risk.
Right.
The rescues that have been acquired and donated or loaned, they're a very valuable asset that are providing enhanced safety for our community.
Right. So good news this week. A couple of good things happened the last several weeks, actually, Ben, I think that are historic for us. The first one was a couple of weeks ago when the board approved the COPs, the certificates of participation, and then we closed on that.
Yes.
Refinanced the pension debt, so we're financially we're in a more stable position.
And in 20 years, how much are we going to save as an organization?
In 17 years, we're going to save the taxpayers $21 million.
That's a good chunk of change.
I think it is a good chunk of change. And then Tuesday night, October 12th, 2021, because we want to commemorate the date, the board of directors unanimously gave us direction to file our certificate of necessity application so we can seek the opportunity to provide actual ambulance transport instead of rescue transport. And that way, we don't receive the letters from the state saying notice of investigation or questions from AMR that look a lot like complaints. So on October 25th, we will have the resolution before the board, the final resolution, then we can drop that. So it's a huge step, but on a very long road ahead.
Absolutely. But, it just goes right in line with the mission of the organization and the values. And, it's a great service to our community.
Well, and it's providing a service that's sorely lacking.
Yeah.
There is another private company, Priority, that has their hearing over this week and again next week. And we look forward to see what's happening with that. We worked really hard to court them into putting a CON, certificate of necessity, for this area because of the issues. And that was at the direction of our elected officials and community leaders who said, we would like to see another private company appear to provide competition in the market. And then we'd also like to see CAFMA get a CON. And here's the deal. What we're doing today, Ben, is we're working with the paramedics and EMTs on the ground level for AMR. Our intent is to continue working with them. And when we're filling in, because AMR can't provide a transport unit, we're not filing a complaint about that. We're not sticking a stick in AMR's eye. We're just transporting the patient, and that's it. And we send both the Department of Health Services and AMR a weekly report of here's what we transported. We're not filing complaints. We're not doing anything. And for their part, I think it's important for the public to know AMR has called us on 3 separate occasions to see if we would send a rescue outside of our jurisdiction for a call that they could not take.
There's a definite need for more ambulances.
So to me, that shows a need, and it's interesting that we're filing questions, and at the same time asking us for assistance. And what I told DHS when I had that conversation with them was, look, I'm not going to file a complaint against AMR for asking us for help. That's the way it should work.
Absolutely.
And I just didn't want to do anything that would get me in more trouble and in court over responding outside our jurisdiction. Turns out, since we don't have a certificate of necessity, technically we don't have a jurisdictional boundary, so we can help. And I told DHS, it's not, we want to do what's right for patients, period.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we continue to work with the transport provider in the field. Our issue is corporate and management, but how we got here really is a lack of regulatory oversight from the Department of Health Services of the state of Arizona. They've allowed this mess to happen and continually look the other way rather than dealing with the issues that we've put out in front of them. I think you remember just a few years ago, we went to DHS with 14 members of the community from up here, mayors, attorneys,
Yes.
fire chiefs. And the final response that we got from the deputy chief of the Bureau of EMS at the time was, AMR's a really good company. You should just try harder to work with them. And to that point, because we keep hearing that we're not working with them, that they've reached out the olive branch. We tried for years, Ben, as you know.
Wow.
We even offered the opportunity to co-staff, and they declined. Since Priorities dropped their CON, they want us to sign an agreement with them. Well, signing a piece of paper with them does not mean suddenly more resources appear.
I don't think it's happened yet.
No, because Prescott ratified a contract with them, and then were immediately transporting patients in their own private vehicles.
Yeah.
And if we look across the valley, they've lost almost every contract down there for failure to perform. And I think that just points to the bigger problem. And you see it in Pinal, you see it in Pima, you see it in Mojave County. You see it here.
Yeah, it's a common thread across the board, and I'm looking forward to working with the organizations in this area to try to provide some solutions. As CAFMA has done with the rescues, I think that's a great avenue that we went, and I'm hoping that we can work with DHS to provide some more solutions. Well,
and we are working on some legislative language to update, after that scathing 1999 Arizona Auditor General report that said this system's a complete cluster. In short, I'm summarizing. But in 22 years, it hasn't changed. No. So it's time for change. But that change will only happen if you take action. So here's the call to action this week, Ben. The call to action is go to our webpage. Jonah's going to have the link at the bottom. Go to the contact section. You have got to make contact with Senator Fan, Senator Kwan, Senator Burgess, Representative Kwan and Representative Burgess. You need to call their offices and let them know that you're concerned. And we have their information on our webpage. Additionally, call the Department of Health Services. Let them know that you're frustrated that they've allowed this situation to occur. And call the governor's office, because it is the governor's office that's direct oversight with Department of Health Services. We have talked to them ad nauseum, and nothing has happened to date to address this issue. What do we want? We want an emergency declaration from the governor to tell us to operate these rescues as ambulances so that we can staff them properly and without the fear of reprisal or some sort of legal retaliatory action from the state for us operating these things. The state won't let anybody else up here. They're not going to address the lack of response resources from AMR. Well, then give us what we need so that we can properly respond, working with the other transport agency that's in the area to ensure the best interest of the patient. And that's you all who call 911.
And we've got a Facebook link as well to that.
We do. We have Facebook links to the webpage. We'll have the link in this. We're also looking for them to expedite our CON once we drop the application and really any CON, the fact that it takes 18 months just to get to a hearing And the only reason you have to have a hearing is because under current state statute, as soon as you drop a CON, the Bureau has to pick up the phone, call every CON holder, and ask if they want to take you to court or intervene, which means take you to court. And historically, AMR always says, yes, we do, which is where priority is right now. AMR is intervening, saying that there's not a need for additional transport up here. I think it's on the interfacility side, because when we're dropping the CON, just for everyone's edification, we're not looking for interfacility. That's private company stuff. We are simply looking at an interdependent relationship, public-private partnership, running ambulances to cover 911 emergency response.
Absolutely. So you're telling me the Department of Health Services cannot take an application and determine if there's need in an area?
No, the experts can't determine need. It has to go in front of an administrative law judge who has no expertise in EMS.
And it's the agencies that currently hold the service in that area that are providing if there's need or lack of need?
Yes, that's their argument.
There's no self-interest in that?
Oh, absolutely not. Couldn't be. So on that note, I know we've gone long this week, but Ben, I appreciate it. This is a very important topic. We have a lot of information out there. I know there are some people who are going to be upset with us for this. I'm okay with that, because the reality is we have got to get the public motivated to make the call, send the letter, send the email, send the tweet, hit the Instagram, send the Facebook post, message, whatever, to the state, to our legislators, to our elected officials, and say, enough is enough, do something, because they won't do it from us. They need to hear from you, the citizens, the people who elect them. So Ben, go ahead.
It's a pleasure. And in partnership, we've posted all of the stuff on our websites and Facebook pages. So if any of our followers, you'll have access to all of the information as well. We'll continue to distribute that out through our channels and try to help support this cause.
And I will continue to go out and speak in front of town councils and anyone else who invites me to talk about the issue and get the information out. I won't be this long-winded, but it's a podcast, so we'll just get more information.
People don't watch the end anyway, Chief.
No, they don't. No. But, it is a nice, well, no, it's not. All the technical stuff John has done has made this nice. The room itself is not.
Well, thank you for having me, Chief. It was a pleasure.
Well, Ben, thank you for coming on. And next week, we're going to a different topic. It's not going to be ambulance. It's not going to be controversial, maybe. But until then, please visit the web link, make the calls. That's our call to action to you.